prepared for what the truth may be? Is mankind prepared for what the truth may be? This is what we will be exploring in this series known as Beyond Undisclosed.
That seems to be the thing right now. This is WBOU 106.9 Chicago FM, also HomeNetwork.tv, StreamLife.tv, and FreedomNation.tv, all in one place. You can find us. Also, that was about the 5 people that were sent in order to do the official testing of the soil and stuff like that in the Ohio train derailment. For some reason, their information is not wanted. Their testimony is no longer desired, so apparently they were sacrificed. What do you think about that, Robert?
It's not unusual when someone comes out with unfavorable information. They always say, kill the messenger. Right? So they kill a messenger, and then they put another mouthpiece there. And even as we speak, they're probably browbeating and threatening, cajoling the next mouthpiece to say, "Oh, those were hastily recorded findings. It's not true." Coming up with some false cover-up. But I was watching last night videos from that region. And they said that most of it was burned, and some people went over to the river and they took a rock and they threw it into the river when close to the shore. When it hit the bottom, all of the residue is along the bottom of the rivers, and it's flowing through the Ohio River and going downstream and through the tributaries. So the surface of the water has a very thin oil slick, but the sludge is under the water. When they threw the rock in and they started to stir it up and scoop it up, this black mass started to rise up to the surface, and the people of East Palestine are not being respected, and they're being tossed out with disease. They're bleeding, their lungs are full of blood, they're coughing up blood. These are the signs of mustard gas. And as I explained in the opening part of the program, the combination of the chlorines, a double molecule of chlorine instead of a single molecule of chlorine as is usually used in the manufacture of plastics, has turned the cloud into phosgene, which is the technical name for mustard gas that was used in World War I.
Well, you know how the CDC or YouTube will censor anything that isn't verified by the CDC?
Of course.
Okay, well, here's something I'd like to see them censor. This is directly from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Facts about sulfur mustard. Sulfur mustard is a type of chemical warfare agent. These agents cause blistering of the skin, mucous membranes on contact. They also called something I can't pronounce, or blistering agents. Sulfur mustard is also known as mustard gas or mustard agent, or by the military designations H, HD, and HT. Sulfur mustard sometimes smells like garlic, onions, or mustard, and sometimes has no odor. It can be a vapor, the gaseous form of liquid, an oily textured liquid or solids. Okay, if sulfur mustard is released into the air as a vapor, people can be exposed through skin contact, eye contact, or breathing. Sulfur mustard vapor can be carried long distance by wind. If sulfur mustard is released into the water, people can be exposed by drinking the contaminated water or getting it on their skin. People can be exposed from liquid sulfur mustard by eating it or getting it on their skin. In other words, you have to cover all your food. If this stuff is airborne, there's no way of avoiding it.
That's correct. That's why for the last 2 weeks I've been warning people in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, generally Pennsylvania and points eastward, that they should not expose themselves to rain, because this toxic cloud went up, and the heat of the cloud, of the fire, carried it up to stratospheric altitudes. And so these molecules are lingering up there. They're brought down by rain. and contaminating the soil. But then evaporation will lift those molecules up once again to rise into the clouds. So I warn people in those areas, the areas surrounding East Palestine, and I would say within a 500-mile radius, not to expose yourselves to rain, because the rain will be carrying the residue of this toxic black mushroom cloud for a very long time. It is toxic, it'll burn your skin, it'll burn your lungs and your nostrils, so protect yourself against these rains.
Well, here's something that I'm going to go ahead and follow up. I'm going to jump into something right here. I have a number, Center of Disease Control and Prevention. It's an 800 number in case you want to know more about this. I want to know more about this. Let's see what the CDC actually has to say. I'll let them know. Okay, and
okay.
Let's see here. I need to get a connection here first. Maybe we ought to go to music while I get them on the phone.
No, why don't you let me do Putin, his report on his suspension of the START treaty.
You bet. It should be about a minute that I get this phone straightened out here.
Okay, well in that minute I can give you this information. This comes from the Congressional Post. You can go to congressionalpost.com to find it. Putin suspends START, the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, blames the West for the war in Ukraine. In a State of the Nation address, Russian President Vladimir Putin blamed the West for provoking the war in Ukraine and announced the suspension of Moscow's participation in the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. The treaty, signed by the U.S. and Russia in 2010, came into effect February 5, 2011. It limited the number of intercontinental range nuclear weapons that two nations could deploy. However, hours after his address, the Russian Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, "It will respect the under the new START Nuclear Arms Control Treaty," unquote, according to the Associated Press. Putin argued that it was not Ukraine fighting for its very existence. We aren't fighting the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people have become hostages of the Kiev regime and its Western masters, which have effectively occupied the country, Putin said. While explaining his decision to suspend the new START treaty, Putin accused the United States and its allies of wanting to see Russia's defeat in Ukraine. Quote, "They want to inflict a strategic defeat on us and try to get to our nuclear facilities at the same time," unquote, Putin said. The Russian president blamed countries like the U.S. for starting the war in Ukraine. Folks, there can be no doubt about that. This is Robert Morningstar's editorial. There can be no doubt that this was forced on Russia by design, by the intention of NATO, the European Union, and the Joe Biden administration.
All right, I've got the phone fired up here. Let's go ahead and try to give them a call.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for calling the Rocky Mountain Poison Center. For English, press 1. If you're calling from a healthcare facility, press 1. If this is an actual or possible poison emergency, press 2. For a pill ID, press 3. For public education, press 4. To speak with a healthcare professional, press 0. Your call may be recorded. We're sorry, all staff are assisting other callers. Please stay on the line and someone will be with you shortly.
Well, of course. How could they actually have so many people calling them? How could they actually have so many people calling? Is a poison hotline really that busy?
I'm sure it is. Just get 1,300 people in Palestine calling to find out what's happening to them. You're going to be blocked up. So, as I was saying, NATO and the EU and Biden, Joe Biden, started this war, and the real target, my friends, is not Russia. It was Germany. The RAND Corporation leaked the paper. Someone, a good guy, a white hat in the RAND Corporation, leaked the paper about 3 months ago, which was written a month before the war started. And it stated that the real enemy of the United States economically was Germany, and that they had to sever the relationship between Germany and Russia to deindustrialize Germany, to put a monkey wrench into the economy of the European Union and make them totally dependent upon the United States for everything. Furthermore, it's now been proven Seymour Hersh of the formerly the New York Times, has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that the United States conducted ecological terrorism when it blew up the Gulf Stream 1 and 2 pipelines and released tons and tons and tons of methane gas into the Baltic Sea. So we're on the wrong track of history. And as I was saying, it was NATO, the EU, and Joe Biden that forced this war on Russia. And even the Pope, whom I do not admire very much, because I consider him a heretic, came out and said it almost poetically. He said, NATO caused this war by barking at Putin's door. And that, so I'm going to continue since we're not getting through to the CDC.
Yeah, they seem to be non-compos mentis.
Yeah, well, here we go. Putin continued. It is they who have started the war, and we are using force to end it, he said. The U.S. has supplied nearly, this figure is very wrong, but I'll tell you the right figure. The U.S. has supplied $110 billion in aid to Ukraine, of which $46 billion was in military aid. Biden spoke in Kiev, and he said that he's going to give them $500 million more. That's another $500 million, plus 1,000 missiles and 700 tanks. Joe Biden.
Oh, and also chemical weapons.
I don't know if he mentioned that openly.
I don't think he would. But that's what they're giving him. It's obvious it was charted for there.
Yeah, it's not a surprise that he stumbled again. He was climbing up the gangway, the ladder, the stairs up onto Air Force One, and he fell on his face again. So Putin also accused Western nations of targeting Russia's culture and religion because they are aware that, quote, it is impossible to defeat Russia on the battlefield, unquote. See what they do with their own people. The destruction of the family, cultural and national identity, perversion, mockery of children, and pedophilia are declared to be the norm, Putin said. Millions of people in the West understand that they are leading to a real spiritual disaster, he added.
Wow.
Headlines. Putin gave a speech today and dedicated part of it to the culture war, including the destruction of culture, history, churches, and religious institutions, nuclear families, the normalization of pedophilia, the transing of children's... Have you got any thoughts, folks? Let me not forget, this attack on religion is nationwide. The Bishop of Los Angeles murdered, and there was a pipe bomb found in a Catholic church in Philadelphia. So, Christians and Caucasians, you need to be aware there is a war against you, and it's being waged by a godless government right here in the United States. The godless mentality that we used to associate.
I hesitate to say that. What I think has happened is basically our government is not the ones that are doing it. It's corporate entities that are controlling entities of our government. It isn't the government at fault here. It is the lobbyists and the way that we allow that money in order to flow to begin with in order to create these bribes.
But those apparatchiks are cooperating. They're taking the bribes, so it is the government. The people
well, they're taking the bribes based on also blackmail. These guys are going around partying, doing things that there's not exactly socially acceptable, and then appearing on camera saying everything is okay. The biggest problem is, regardless of left, right, they actually happen to be mammals, and guess what? They're easily, because of their position, blackmailed.
Well, that's a standard operating procedure in government, intelligence, secret societies, to compromise the individual so you have something over their heads with which to force behavior. So, but they are the ones who commit the behavior in the first place. So then, basically, they recruit unethical and immoral people into these positions. And that has been the case since the Kennedy administration. After Kennedy was assassinated, the great cover-up by the Democrat Party began, and people who would not go along with the cover-up were purged. So that all you have now are yes men whose eyesight does not go on beyond the edge of their desks. They're willing to rubber stamp anything that comes from, quote-unquote, on high. And that is not the type of person that we need overseeing the government.
No, we sure don't. We've only got a couple minutes left here. We're going to go ahead and play a little bit of music here. Thank you for joining. You've been listening to WBOU 106.9 Chicago FM radio. And also, you're listening to HomeNetwork.tv, FreedomNation.tv, and this is provided in part by StreamLife.tv. Stick around. We've got the Keys for Inspiration Hour coming up, and you'll enjoy that as well.
People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked